What does the future hold for print journalism?
I think the honest answer is that the print journalism industry just doesn't know yet. A lot of people are trying to figure it out. Sam Zell, Rupert Murdoch, newspapers all over the country. It's a tough time for the industry. It's sort of a collapsed business model. Readers and advertisers are migrating to the internet. The precedent has been set that news online is free, and newspapers are trying to figure out how you work in that new difficult environment.
Right. Well, I think, and the paradox here is that as newspaper sites like the Boston Globe's, Boston.com, and my former newspaper, the Miami Herald, as newspaper websites have been up and have prospered here, the irony is that as we pull readers away from the old newspaper, we end up costing just about $10 for every person who shifts. And I suppose, again, there's an irony in that our readership numbers, when you add both what's online and what goes on in the newspaper, our readership numbers are as healthy or healthier than ever. So what we seem to be in is an era where the journalism that we do is successful, but our ability to actually monetize that is in trouble. So where do we go? What are the alternatives?
I think that's true, and more on that irony, the Globe often talked about that. Boston.com, which is one of the country's most successful websites, has about 500,000 viewers a day, I believe, or visitors a day, but it's at the expense of the print product. So it's this great irony about more readers, more interest, more news competitors, but just a more difficult financial environment to do that in.
Was your decision to leave the Boston Globe and go to WBUR in any way related to concern about the future, or the future at least at a newspaper-based company?
Oh, very much. And it also was beginning to feel like a place that didn't have that much opportunity. The Globe, I think, was scaling back its ambitions. It had closed its foreign bureaus. It had eliminated its roving national reporter. There were many of us who had hoped to do those jobs one day, and those jobs didn't exist anymore. And so it was a really difficult decision. I think I would have loved to work for a newspaper forever, but public radio is exciting. It's a new challenge. NPR in particular is quite a powerhouse, so it made sense to do this.
Yeah, personally. Well, what about those jobs, though, that are being taken away, or at least have been shifted elsewhere? You mentioned that the Globe closed its foreign bureaus, which is also the case at my newspaper, the Miami Herald, where we have certainly closed a number of them over the years and shifted operation of several of them from the Miami Herald to our corporate parent, the McClatchy Company now. And so I guess the question is, what will this do to the information that used to be provided to our consumers, our news consumers, our readers?
Right, and I think that's a tough question. There's less variety. There are fewer people covering the news. There's some news that's now going uncovered, and I think that's a loss for readers. It's a sad thing to watch happen. One of the issues we were going to talk about was sort of whether you need different skills now. I don't think you need different skills. You just might need more skills. You still need curiosity. You need to be a scrupulous fact checker, but you also need to think digitally. You need to think about, do we break this news now, or is this something we can hold till the next day? You need to be more nimble. And I think these are all good skills for reporters to have.
Well, I actually think that the skills that good journalists have always had carry forward, and they are, as you said, the analytical approach to questions, always asking why something happened and how something happened, and what we do need to be more nimble at. A good word from you is using the tools, these new tools that come along. But just as when I started out, I mean, literally newsrooms were filled with old upright typewriters that we thought the IBM Selectric was really a breakthrough. Nowadays, of course, as you know, any journalist going into any newsroom, even a newspaper-based newsroom, has to know how to operate across several platforms. But it's, again, the fundamentals of journalism have remained, I think, as essential as they ever were. So to that extent, we're just, as I say, we're becoming more adept at the tools we have. And frankly, I think that's kind of exciting to be able to use these tools. But we can't let the tools become the tail wagging the dog either. What a mixed
Right.
metaphor that is.
Right. I teach an investigative journalism class or a research journalism class at Boston University. And one of the things that I try to emphasize to my students is there is an enormous amount of information available online. You just have to know where to find it and what to do with it once you do. And it doesn't cost money. You know, there are many newspapers that can afford very expensive databases, but for free, you can get an enormous amount of real estate and property tax information.
Right.
Corporate tax filings, nonprofit tax filings. It's amazing. So that's empowering. And I think that while the internet is presenting a challenge, it's also an enormous opportunity in terms of the amount of information that is out there. It just takes being smart and sophisticated and, again, knowing where to find it and how to use it.
Right. Well, you used a good word there, being smart about this, because that if there is one trait that is going to separate a professional journalist from the citizen journalist, it's knowing not just maybe how to express an opinion, because a lot of people know how to do that, but it's really knowing what content means, how to value content, how to find that information. You can go online, as you say, and gather all kinds of information, from property records to corporate performance and so forth, but if you really don't know what that means and then how to apply that, then it's essentially, it may be worse than useless, because you can misuse that information. So again, I think our profession has to be very careful that we don't just surrender what we do and maybe we'll run off and become PR people. I don't know.
And although we've talked about some of the negatives going on in the industry, I still think it's just about the greatest job you can have. It's interesting, it's fun, it's good for the brain. You can do something meaningful while at the same time doing something that feels personally gratifying. And I think that that's an important thing for people to remember.
Okay. Let me just a final question maybe. How do you think we should define a journalist in this era when everything does seem a bit more ambiguous?
Well, I'm still wrestling with that. You know, I don't think that there's this tendency to want to dismiss the bloggers, but we have so many examples of bloggers and websites breaking enormous news. I think that there's been this priesthood element to the print media in particular for a long time, and I think that we're having to look at that and decide whether it's time to open up the fold, that more people can call themselves journalists than used to, and I think we're still figuring that out.